If you can introduce yourself and jump in, you've got about 15 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll do Q&A for 15 minutes afterwards. Please, everyone, put comments or questions in the chat, and we can cover those at the end of Tyler's presentation.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, really excited to be here. I've done a couple Midday Connect sessions, and they're always so fun. I love the breakout rooms, love getting to know all of you. I recognize actually quite a few of you, which is super fun. So yeah, I am going to talk a lot today about how to create a process, how to delegate that, how to save a lot of time every single month. But I would absolutely love any questions that come into the chat. I will try to answer those as I go through this presentation. I might even go off of my presentation for a little bit and show you some of the tools that we use internally to train our VAs to automate things with AI. And so if you have any questions about the tools we use, if you have any questions about anything, please put it in the chat, and I will get to that. So starting off, brief introduction to myself in case you don't already know me. My name is Tyler. I live in Arizona. I think a lot of you here are from Utah. My parents are up in Alpine, but I moved down to the heat. And so for me, I am co-founder of Venture Validator. We actually sold to that a couple years ago. And then also Coconut VA. We've grown Coconut to about 3 million of ARR in 3 years. And our basic value prop here is that we help founders. We hire remote and we pay, and you can hire remote and pay month to month for 50% less than a US employee would cost. So that's the overall gist of Coconut. I'm happy to go into any specific questions on how to hire VAs and how to delegate to them. So that's what I'm going to go over today. The very first thing I wanted to go over is this chart. So the very first process in creating processes for your VA, creating processes for your employees, obviously is to figure out, okay, what are we trying to do? Now, one thing that I recommend to almost every founder that comes in is to do week or month reviews historically. So, hey, go to this past week through your project management software or your notes or whatever it is, and just mark down all of the tasks that you completed this past week, this past month, whatever it might be, and just start noting that down. Like, what are you actually doing each week? What are you getting done? And then start to evaluate those tasks, evaluate those projects. You can use all sorts of different tools. One that we put here is this matrix. So you can see, okay, some of these tasks are urgent and important. Some of them are urgent, not important. Some of them are just not urgent, but they are important, not urgent, or not important at all. Now you see these different squares here, right? Like if it's urgent, if it's important, if it needs to be done by you, then do that thing, right? But if it's urgent, maybe not as important, or if it just doesn't need your actual hand on that task, then you can delegate that. So I'll actually use Taylor Bench as a fantastic example here. Hannah is one of his VAs. She's on the call. She manages a lot of the operations behind Midday Connect. Taylor could probably talk more about how he sets it up, but I think this is a great example because Taylor is physically on the call, right? He's the one that, talks to you. He builds that relationship with all of you, but he does not need to actually send the emails to notify you of the next session coming up. He doesn't need to send up, the follow-up outreach. He doesn't need to set up the Luma event. There's so many other things that are urgent, they are important, they need to be done, but he can delegate the tasks that don't have to actually be done personally by him. And I think that's a fantastic example. There's tons of other examples we could go over. And of course, there are some things also that you can automate, especially nowadays with so many AI and automation tools coming out, you know, every single week, every single day. And I'll try to go over some of those tools today as well. So that's a brief overview of how to figure out what can I actually delegate. It does depend on your company size. It depends on how much you've got going on, and obviously your budget at the end of the day. We typically recommend that kind of baseline revenue that a company would need to have before hiring a VA is probably like $250,000 a year in annual revenue. That's kind of the minimum that we found to be really successful. They actually have enough going on. They have enough work and enough budget to really sustain a VA. So hopefully that's helpful knowledge for all of you. Now going on to the next slide here, we want to create a process that anyone can actually execute on. So before I go into the text on this slide, one tool that I found really helpful, you can see actually on the bottom left, is Loom. So use Loom and ChatGPT to develop standard operating procedures, SOPs. Hopefully none of you are still manually writing standard operating procedures. It's mind-numbing work, it's monotonous work, and I hope you're not still doing this. A very easy way to do this moving forward is to record yourself doing a task on Loom or any video recording tool. Just literally commentate as you go through a task, as you go through a project, like, hey, this is the button I click on. This is, what I need to put into, this text box, all of that type of information. Just go through the task as if you are actually doing it. And then there's a couple different ways to go from there. What I would recommend is literally just download the transcript from that video and upload that into a tool like ChatGPT and just say, hey, transfer this or uh, adapt this to become a standard operating procedure that I could give somebody else on my team. And that will start to put together like a really solid operating procedure because of all of the context and all of the information that you've already given through this Loom video. And that's what we recommend to literally every client that comes through Coconut. And have found that to be so effective. And then when you do have somebody coming onto your team, or if you already have somebody on your team, just hand them that standard operating procedure as well as the Loom video. That way it gives them that video or that visual learning as well as like this step-by-step process. Um, let's see, I'm just going to check real quick in the chat to see if we have any questions, but um, okay, yeah, perfect. So the other thing that I wanted to mention here on the top left is to break down the task. Now, I would recommend this if it's a task or a project that is more complex. Standard operating procedures are great for things that can be repeatable, very repeatable. So, setting up a Luma event, right, and getting everybody on this call, that's a fairly standard operating procedure. But if it's something that is more complex, or you just haven't even figured out exactly what to do yet, I would recommend a tool like Mural. I'm actually going to go to my other screen here and share with you one of the processes that we've made. Can you still see my screen? Is it sticking with me? Okay, perfect. So this is called Mural. It's a digital whiteboard tool. This is a process flow that we created. This was like a draft. So this is not something that we had completed yet. It's not something that we had automated. It wasn't a repeatable process yet. So Mural is a great way to basically put this idea or put this process down onto paper, get it out of your head, and really think through everything before you can have a solid repeatable process that you can actually delegate to somebody else. So the great thing about this tool is it's very flexible, right? So you can build these funnels, these flows, however you want. This is actually for a founder community event that we were hosting. And so it's a fantastic tool to really just kind of map out your thought process. And then as you go through this process, you can refine this as you go. Once it's down pat, you do kind of the same thing every time. As a founder, you've pioneered this, you've figured out how it's done. And now that it's repeatable, now that's something you can record a Loom video, put it into ChatGPT, and delegate to somebody else. So that's one other tool that I wanted to touch on there. Now going over back into this deck here, I'm actually going to go into the next slide. I want to make sure that we cover all of the information. So how do you delegate these tasks effectively? At the very beginning, it's choosing the right person for the task. That means either hiring somebody or finding somebody on your team that is properly equipped to do that task well, setting very clear expectations. Again, with nowadays we have so many tools that can help us with this. ChatGPT is a fantastic resource. Even if you just go in and say, hey, create a job description for XYZ, a Scrum Master, or for an event manager, event planner, something like that. Providing the training is what we just talked about in this past slide. You can develop a training plan using Loom with ChatGPT. You can record those training videos. One thing that we have found to be really beneficial, especially for our VAs. They're based in the Philippines, empowering them to take ownership of tasks and projects. And this definitely applies to US employees as well. Empowering them to take ownership of a task or a project is vital, making sure that they feel like they are really, in the driver's seat of this task, of this project, is very, very beneficial. And it just makes the task, makes the project so much more fulfilling for them as they make progress through it each and every time. And then one thing that we would also recommend is making sure that you track progress. So that could be like a project management tool. We've used Monday.com. We love Monday.com. They're a fantastic tool. One thing that we've also done in the past, especially with like VAs or an executive assistant, is end of day reports. So once you've delegated a task or a whole host of tasks, you can ask your VA to send you an end of day report at the end of every day, or an end of week report. And that basically just goes down, hey, here's how many hours I spent at work today, and here's what I completed. We don't recommend doing anything like a time tracker or a super stringent like screen tracker. We've run into other agencies and other companies that do that, and that's very demoralizing, and that doesn't create a very fun work environment. So something like a very simple end of day report where you're really tying performance to outcomes, we found that to be very beneficial. All right, now going into this next slide here, teaching autonomy in the workplace. So I've already talked a little bit about this, but really empowering your team to make sure that they feel like they can be independently successful. After you hand them a Loom video, after you hand them an SOP, there shouldn't be a lot of time where you still need to do hand holding with them. We've noticed that if we hand off a whole process to somebody on our team, it takes probably like a roughly 2 weeks for them to really take it on completely, and where we don't really have to coach them, we don't have to hold their hand anymore, unless it's a constantly evolving project. But if it's a repeatable process, we found that 2 weeks is about the right amount of time where we can hand this off to them. We can coach them through, random use cases that come up during those first 2 weeks. And then after that 2 weeks, they're kind of off to the races. We don't really need to mess with that anymore. They're kind of independent at that point. Now going into this next slide, again, I briefly touched on this earlier, but we have found it really important to build that confidence up in our VAs, in our employees, celebrating those small wins, providing constructive feedback, especially in those first 2 weeks when you first delegate that task to somebody, making sure that you are over communicating resources, you are over communicating as much as possible, especially in that first little bit. If you give as much information, as much context in that first, delegation session or in those first 2 weeks, you'll be so much more successful than if you hold back or if you just give, a little bit here, a little bit there. Then it's just going to create this dependency where they're always coming to you for questions and they're always coming to you for these random little things. But if you empower them, say, hey, here's everything I've got on it, you take it from here, and just empower them to be able to solve problems as they come up, we have found that to be so successful. All right, now the last slide I wanted to go over here. Now this is where I wanted to get into some of the tools that we use internally. We commonly use Zapier for a lot of our repetitive tasks that don't need to be done by a human being. I haven't created like a matrix for this yet, but I think there's another matrix that we could create here where you basically have this criteria. Does it need to be done by you as the founder? If not, does it need to be done by a human at all? And if not, then see if we can automate it. And like I hire source VAs all the time, but I would still very much recommend that you find places to automate wherever you can. You don't have to delegate if you can automate something. And so Zapier is a fantastic tool. I can show you very briefly a couple of the automations that we have in Zapier, and then a couple other tools that we have. Let's see, let's go over to Zapier. So if you're not familiar with it, this is Zapier. This is what a Zap flow looks like. This is a fairly complex one. It's a multi-step Zap that has a couple different paths. If you have any specific questions on it, feel free to ping me. I'm always happy to, even after this webinar, I'm always happy to answer questions. I love this stuff. This is this is my fun. And so if you ever have any questions, let me know. But the basic idea of this here is that in Zapier, you have some kind of trigger, and then you have all of these succeeding actions. So, again, I'm kind of picking on Taylor with Midday Connect here, but if Taylor gets a new sign up for Midday Connect, that can be the trigger here, right? Like, okay, Hannah just signed up to be an attendee at this new Midday Connect session. Here's all the different actions that need to happen. And one of those can even be to notify somebody on your team, right? So that they can complete the tasks that need to be done by a human. If you wanted to do a super high touch process, you could have, yes, they're moved into the CRM, or they have this confirmation email sent to them. But like for us, we could also send it to our event planner on our team, or an SDR, whoever it might be, and say, hey, actually go give this person a call, get to know them, ask them these questions, do like a little onboarding call, or just get to know them, right? So there's all sorts of things you can do with a tool like Zapier. Um, a couple other things I wanted to show you real quick. This is our Monday.com. We used to actually use Monday.com for a CRM as well, but the basic idea of Monday.com is it's a fantastic project management tool, and they've also come a long way in creating the page like this that you see in front of you, which is basically Google Docs, but in Monday. So you can create trainings, you can create SOPs within Monday.com. So I really like doing that, because then it's a one-stop shop for a lot of people. They can go into Monday.com, see this project, see this task, and then if they forget anything, if they need help on the sequence of how to do something, they can go into this Monday doc, and they can see all of these step-by-step processes. And it can also get very intricate as well, where because it's in Monday.com, you can actually call back to other tables. So, I'll go into like our to-do board. I have not updated this recently, but here's like all of our to-dos. Here's all the columns that we've got going on. You can actually have it call back to this table. So if you have a, cold email tutorial in a Monday doc, you can actually call back to one of these tables to show an example, or to show like the dynamic information, um, of today, which is very powerful. So Monday.com is a very powerful tool, and highly recommend that for project management. Uh, let's see. The last thing I wanted to go over, just tool wise, is Loom. Most of you have probably seen a Loom video or recorded a Loom video. I just wanted to show you real quick what it looks like. This is a very brief training that I created for one of our VAs. All I did was record, I hit record, started talking, showed one of the processes that I do. And then I just sent the link to her, and then she actually created the SOP. So she downloaded the transcript, put that through ChatGPT, and now she never has to come back to this again, or never has to come back to me again, because she can consult this video, she can consult the transcript and the SOP that was generated. Um, so yeah, those are the main tools I wanted to go over. The very last slide here, measuring success and iteration. So the main point that I wanted to get across here on this slide is going back again to those end of day reports. Basically, you need to find a way that works for you, works for your culture, on how to measure success on your team, uh, and specifically for whatever job role that they have. So one thing that we've actually started doing recently is North Star goals. It's similar to like the EOS methodology, but we do quarterly based North Star goals for the entire team. And we found that to be really, really beneficial. So what you're trying to do is basically distill each job role into like one or two metrics that are really going to show that they are being successful. So for example, one of our metrics is turnaround time for staffing VAs to clients. And so for our hiring team, that's one of their North Star goals, is like their North Star goal is to get 100% of recommendations out within 5 business days. So if they are successful in that, we know that everything else is going well. Like we know that sourcing is going well. We know that everything else in their task list, in their projects is going well, because they are able to get those recommendations out within 5 business days. And then the other, goal that can kind of go in tandem with that is how many batches of recommendations are we sending out? So yes, maybe we're getting out every batch within 5 days, but are we always doing, 5 batches? Like that would be a really bad sign. So I highly recommend doing something like that, where you can distill this job role into just a couple metrics of success to really give your employees, your VAs, a really solid focus on their role and how they are contributing to the overall success of your company. There's a lot of other little things that you can do to make sure that your VA, your employee is being productive, that they understand their role, that they understand what's expected of them. But I really wanted to point out that North Star methodology. We found that to be really helpful. Just these quarterly goals, quarterly sprints to really distill what is success in that job role. So yeah, that's it. That's the slide deck from me. Happy to answer any questions that have come up. Yeah, and take it from there.
Awesome. Tyler, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. For anybody who has questions, feel free to please put them in the chat, and or you can raise your hand on Zoom and we can jump into those. I put some of my questions into the chat, so while people are either thinking of theirs or typing them out, Tyler, are you able to share any of those end of day reports or examples of those that are good to be able to use as kind of go-bys or templates for people?
Yes, definitely. I'll pull up my executive assistant's end of week report from last week and we'll check it out.
And then while you're doing that, I asked kind of, this is a general group question, but on the Eisenhower matrix, how does everybody decide which box to put a task in? Do you have a quantifiable way or a objective way of deciding what goes into the specific boxes? So
Mm.
would love to hear anybody's thoughts on that. And Tyler, if you have some after you show this report, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, this is my executive assistant. This is her previous week of work. We were throwing an event last week, so a lot of this is event related. But this is a great example of a solid end of week report. Obviously, you can see that there's a ton of deliverables that she's completed each and every day. Some things are going to be repeated every day, depending on the role. So like every day she manages my email, so she sorts it out. She schedules calls that need to be scheduled. She'll check some of my cold outreach. She'll actually check on my LinkedIn as well. She'll help me draft LinkedIn posts each and every week. So a lot of those things happen, regularly, and I constantly see them showing up on the end of week report. But there's also a lot of other miscellaneous type tasks or projects that I'm giving her that she's completing each week. So I've converted her over to an end of week report just for you know, not having to check that every single day. But in the first month or two of any VA that you hire, I always recommend an end of day report just so that you can stay on top of what's getting done, making sure that the productivity and understanding is all there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions about what I have my executive assistant doing, what I've seen be successful for other clients. But yeah, that's a great example of an end of week report there.
Thank you. Any thoughts on the objectivity of placing things in that Eisenhower matrix?
Mm, interesting. So yeah, for me, happy for somebody else to talk. I feel like I've been talking too much. But for me, the Eisenhower matrix, yeah, it's interesting. I think it comes pretty easily, I feel like for me, once you have a list of all the tasks you do, um, there's some criteria that you kind of create in your own mind. And I think everybody's everybody has a different threshold for like what they're comfortable delegating. So for a lot of people, like they'll very much resist ever delegating their LinkedIn. And that's, for anything on LinkedIn. I never recommend having somebody else post for you on LinkedIn. I think it should be your own voice. But there are, little things here and there that admin wise somebody could do to help you out on LinkedIn. But again, other clients that I've met don't want anybody to touch their LinkedIn. Some people don't want anybody to touch their email. Some people have very set expectations like on client communication or investor communication, and like they're very particular about it. So I think it does vary, from company to company. For me, like I have my executive assistant in my LinkedIn. She connects with people for me based on a list of criteria that I give her, and that's hugely beneficial. Like I don't have to go in and do those 10 to 20 connections each day. But again, I never have her post for me. She'll help me brainstorm ideas. She'll help me brainstorm, posts, but she never actually posts for me. That's always still coming from me and my voice. So yeah, it really does depend on the individual.
Makes sense. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes for additional questions or discussion. Anyone have anything they would like to ask Tyler? You can come off mute.
Tyler, Joel again. What do you see as untouchables when it comes to virtual agents and also AI agents when it comes to certain things? And you just kind of touched on that, that are going to be your only touch points. What are things that are always going to be within your purview?
Yeah. Yeah, we briefly chatted about this earlier, and I just mentioned there like the LinkedIn aspect. I think even email is going to become more and more important to be personal and to be relatable in email, LinkedIn. Everybody is using AI, everybody's using automation, but it's still very easy to tell when people are doing that and when things are genuine. Kind of a funny example that I'll use real quick is we ran an email campaign recently, and my co-founder said, "Hey, we need to put everything in lowercase." I'm like, well, that's weird. Like it doesn't, it looks weird, it looks unprofessional. Like nobody's going to respond to this email. But everybody, like we had a incredibly high reply rate. We had like a 15% reply rate, which is absolutely crazy. Usually you get like a 1 to 5% reply rate maybe, but it was lowercase. It felt relatable, it felt personal, and it felt like a human. So it's funny enough, I think, the polished, the very professional looking communication or even posts on LinkedIn, those are getting more and more flagged by people. Like their internal red flag is going off because it's like, well, I don't know if a human actually posted that. So it's kind of a funny example, but like our email campaign, right? Like I had to cringe because I hate that. Like I want to see come across as professional, but my co-founder, really pushed for it, and it worked, right? Because these people know that it's a human talking to them. So I think that's going to be really important is investor communication, even sales, like having SDRs not going so far into the AI automation where none of your prospects feel like a human is talking to them. I know some people have had success with that, but I would just be very, very careful with that because I think clients, prospects can see through that so quickly, especially nowadays. Like even personalization, if somebody sends me an email, it's like, "Oh, hey, I saw this LinkedIn post." It's like, I know you didn't see that LinkedIn post. Like there's 1,000, automation tools that could have told you what I posted for the past 30 days and summarize it, all this stuff. So like token personalization is kind of dying, or I think already dead. It's already giving people huge red flags, and so yeah, it's funny, but I think the communication is a big aspect where a founder, SDRs, all of those type of people that are communicating with clients, that needs to still be done by a human. It doesn't have to be, but you're going to stand out more if you do.
Great point.
Thank you.
All right. We're at quarter to the top of the hour. So that's where we end. Tyler, thank you so much. And if you haven't, you're going to send the presentation you went through to Hannah? Will you be able to share
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yep, definitely.
Great. We'll share that all out to all of the attendees today. And if you have any questions for Tyler, please reach out to him. I know he is very available on LinkedIn and otherwise. So amazing education today, Tyler. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks all for joining, and we'll see you back here next week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Good to see you all. Have a great week.